Hi there, I'm the Mythkeeper. Welcome back to my channel, the best place on the internet for Pathfinder lore and history. Last week I talked about the nation of Andoran, and I covered the nation's history, people, and culture, and provided an overview of its lands, major cities, settlements, and various other points of interest. However, I only gave a light overview when it came to the subject of the Eagle Knights, technically a division of Andoran's armed forces, but with a broader mandate and possessing a more autonomous charter than the rest of the military. I did this because the Eagle Knights have a unique history, and their presence is not limited to Andoran. They've been heavily involved in foreign affairs for some time, and they can be found fighting hobgoblins in Isgir, fighting the undead in the Gravelands, and fighting alongside the brave warriors of Mendev and the Sarkorian Khelids on the outskirts of the World Wound. In short, they are worth looking at in a little more detail, receiving a dedicated faction guide, and this is the topic I'm covering today. The history of the Eagle Knights. To understand the special history of the Eagle Knights, we have to go back a little further than the founding of Andoran. We have to understand Cheliax in the Age of Enthronement. Cheliax as it existed before the Death of Prophecy and the Thrune Ascendancy. As described in my Andoran Deep Dive video, the new sovereign state of Cheliax separated from the Empire of Taldor in 4081. Shortly after this, the Chelish king, formerly a Taldan governor named Aspects, used diplomacy and strategic use of military force to absorb Isgir, Andoran, and Galt into the new empire of Cheliax. Between 4081 and the Death of Prophecy in 4606, Andoran was a province of Cheliax, and shared much of Cheliax's culture and values. Just as they did in Cheliax, the people of Andoran worshipped Aradin, and most believed in the Starfall Doctrines, a set of Aradanite prophecies that predicted Aradin would return to the mortal world and make his glorious return at the city of Westcrown, where, upon his return, he would assume the mantle of God Emperor and lead Golarion into an age of glory. This confidence in this destined future, and this religious fervor in their own righteous destiny, led Cheliax, like Taldor before it, into an imperialistic mindset, convinced that in time the entire world would be united with them. Beyond taking the lands of Isgir, Andoran, and Galt from Taldor, they also expanded northwards and southwards. In the north, they conquered Nidal, Malthun, Nirmathus, Korvosa. In the south, along the western coastline of Garand, they conquered a good deal of land as well. They claimed the Taldan-settled pirate islands known as the Shackles along the Garundi coast. Their merchant companies bought and held much of the land around Blood Cove, as discussed in my Western Wangi video. Further south still, they conquered and colonized the entirety of the nation of Sargava, which is now called Vidrian. They also began their practice of slavery in this period. Many people new to the Pathfinder setting believe wrongly that the Chelish slave trade began with the infernal house of Thrune, but it didn't. It predated this, and it began more accurately with the reinterpretation of the Starfall Doctrines by major Chelish high priests across the country, that found evidence in the writings that could be used to center the prophecies on the empire of Cheliax rather than that of Taldor. Aradin himself at this point was far removed from mortal affairs. Busy with the dealings of the heavens, he did not make any interventions in the mortal world to correct or disavow this view. This belief of their divine destiny fueled many of the supremacist ideals of the pre-Thrune Chelish Empire. Halfling communities from the Korvosan coastline were uprooted and brought to serve as house slaves to Chelish lords, while Ekujay elves and Wangi humans from the coast of western Garand were brought north on slave galleys to work fields and perform other hard labor that the halflings were ill-suited to. I bring up this grim reality not to show that Aradin himself had much to answer for in his centuries of absence from the world, but to also point out that Andoran was complicit in all this. Andoran soldiers helped conquer and pacify the northern and southern Chelish conquests, alongside soldiers from the mainland. Andoran aristocrats had halfling slaves in their service, and Andoran farms had Garundi slave laborers tilling their fields. Towards the end of this period, as the religious experts of Cheliax continue to reinterpret their sacred prophecies and anchor those events in Cheliax's western reaches, particularly around the city of Westcrown, other devout members of the Aradanite faith across the empire, especially those further from the Chelish heartland like those in Andoran or Galt, began to wonder how their communities could also contribute to the coming Age of Glory. In Andoran there emerged a sect of holy warriors at the end of this period. Veteran Aradanite paladins and war priests who had fought in the various Chelish conquests of the past age. They approached and suggested to the High Cleric of Aradin in Westcrown that upon his return, the living god himself might need an elite special unit of bodyguards. The High Cleric approved of this idea, and a new order of knights was established in the Andoran capital city of Almas, founded to serve as the elite Templar honor guard to the destined God King. The Templars would never serve that purpose, of course, because Aradin never returned as prophesied. Instead, 3 weeks of storms racked the coastline of the Inner Sea on the foretold day, and all the clerics, paladins, and war priests of Aradin lost their power. Aradin was gone forever. The psychological impact of the God King's death had various effects on the clergy of Aradin across the land. Some turned to despair, but others found solace with other deities, or even more sinister powers. As happened with many such groups, the Andoran group that was founded to serve as the honor guard to Aradin first felt a terrible dread and despair, a purposeless pain that haunted the spirit. Some among them turned to Aradin's herald and great disciple Iomade, who cryptically told them it was a difficult time in the heavens as well. But for Aradin's faithful on Golarion, it was a time for introspection and reinvention. These elite Templars took these messages to heart, and they reevaluated some of their own conquests of foreign lands. But most of all, they reevaluated the subjugation of those whom they had conquered. In the wake of the death of prophecy, the lands of Cheliax fell into a civil war. Aradin's Templars, now turned to worship of Iomade, abandoned Cheliax and returned to Andoran to help keep the peace in their homeland. These Templars didn't take a side in the Chelish civil war. Instead, they focused on their own agenda. They defended towns and homesteads from invading armies and opportunistic pillagers. When they encountered slavery and subjugation, they attempted to bring liberty to the oppressed, even if this ultimately had cost more lives in the doing. In 4640, House Thrune won the civil war. This order of now mostly Iomedean Templars were forced underground and into hiding. Their actions during the civil war had made them enemies of the new Thrunish state, and the Hell Knights hunted for them across Andoran. 30 years later, the people of Andoran organized and began to resist the Chelish state and the new ruling house of Thrune. Motivated by the writings of the Galtan philosopher Darl Ubanik, the resistance took on various symbols to represent the revolutionaries: the Phrygian cap of the Galtan proletariat, and the golden eagle, linking Darl's work to the powerful Avorals of the heavens that had inspired it. In this period of revolution, the Iomedean Templars also adopted these symbols of the new nation. They re-emerged and supported the people's revolt in Andoran, now calling themselves the Eagle Knights. The Eagle Knights joined the people's revolt on a simple condition, readily accepted by the ragged revolutionaries eager for change in their country. The Eagle Knights requested emancipation for all enslaved peoples across the nation. When Andoran won the revolution, it was so, and the Eagle Knights were quick to establish themselves as a powerful adjunct organization, to serve in the interests of Andoran's defense, but to have the autonomy to pursue their own agendas across the Inner Sea. The fact that this order of knights not only effectively predated the Andoran state, but also was critical to its hard-won war for independence, is what ultimately allowed this to be the case. Today, the majority of Eagle Knights continue to be Iomedean, but in keeping with the rejection of their more dogmatic past, the Eagle Knights welcome any worshipper of a celestial, neutral, or lawful deity, only rejecting those who have committed themselves to the causes of evil or chaos. In addition to working in service of the interests of the Andoran state, they also continue to pursue their own charter, and work to disrupt slavery and oppression across the Inner Sea and beyond, making them natural allies of the Firebrands and other pro-liberty factions across Golarion. The structure and organization of the Eagle Knights. Officially, the Eagle Knights are a wing of Andoran's military services, but in actual fact, it is more nuanced than this. In order to better understand, let's take a quick look at Andoran's overall military structure first. The High Commander of all armed forces in Andoran is technically the Supreme Elect, currently Andira Murasek. Under Andira are 4 positions. The Consul Advocate for the Civilian Militia. Andoran is a nation bordered by a powerful enemy that considers this land to rightly belong to them. As such, from its earliest days, Andoran instituted a mandatory 1-year period of service for all Andoran civilians to be typically served at age of maturity. In the case of an extreme emergency, all Andorans may be called on to serve in the defense of the country. The Consul Advocate for the Civilian Militia oversees this program and is appointed to this position by the Supreme Elect. The Consul General for the Andoran Army. The Consul General stationed in Almas oversees Andoran's land forces, including a phalanx and a cavalry. They also oversee certain specialist regiments, such as the infamous Diamond Regiment, which I discuss in more detail in my previous video, a specialist unit tasked with dealing with the werewolf problem of the northern wilds. The Consul General is also an appointed position, named by the Supreme Elect. The Consul Admiral for the Andoran Navy. The Consul Admiral is stationed in Augustana and oversees Andoran's marine forces and battle fleet. In Andoran, this is actually a larger and better funded organization than the army, as after the People's Revolt, Andoran and Cheliax engaged in a 50-year-long naval campaign against each other for dominance over the North Tack. The Consul Admiral is also an appointed position, named by the Supreme Elect. The Knight Commander of the Eagle Knights. Unlike the Consul positions, the Knight Commander is not decided by the Supreme Elect, as the Eagle Knights have the autonomy to decide their own leader. While technically the Knight Commander answers to the Supreme Elect, in truth the precedent is that the Supreme Elect advises the Knight Commander and aligns with them on matters of national defense, but largely allows the Knight Commander full autonomy to execute the function of the Eagle Knights. This special relationship dates back to the founding of the country, and the unique and privileged position the Eagle Knights were given to follow their own agenda. The current Knight Commander is Reginald Cormoth, who was formerly a member of the Navy and trained in Augustana's prestigious naval academies before being invited to join the Eagle Knights after he made several famously daring raids against a number of Chelish slave galleys. Commander Cormoth is now over 80 years of age, but he's lost very little of his vigor. He oversees the Eagle Knights' operations from the Golden Eyrie in Almas. Interestingly enough, many Eagle Knight initiates have met the aging commander without realizing it, since he often adopts disguise and surreptitiously tests aspirants' commitments to the Eagle Knight's ideals. In any case, under Knight Commander Cormoth are 4 specialized companies of the Eagle Knights: the Golden Legion, the Steel Falcons, the Grey Corsairs, and the Twilight Talons. Let's take a deeper look at each of the 4 companies. The Golden Legion. Known formally as the Eagle Knights of the Golden Legion, the Golden Legionnaires act as Andoran's domestic security force. You can think of Golden Legion as Andoran's MI5, or Homeland Security, special elite knights with a focus on securing the nation's borders and overseeing its untamed rural areas. Operating independently within Andoran's borders, Golden Legionnaires seamlessly integrate with the nation's other armed forces, local militia, or alongside city and town watch. Their adaptable field commanders and training officers tailor their expertise to the specific needs of Andoran's diverse regions, such as facing the angry Fae in the Verduran Forest, elaborate kobold traps near the Candlestone Caverns, or dangerous werewolves in the Darkmoon Vale. The primary duty of the Golden Legion is domestic affairs. Rigorous training in defensive tactics and strategies ensures the protection of both Andorans and fellow Legion members. A typical Golden Legionnaire embodies audacious courage, fearlessly positioning themselves between those they protect and any potential threat. An ambush or unprovoked attack stirs their ire, propelling them to acts of selfless bravery and daring prowess. Even on the rare occasion when they are deployed further from home, Golden Legionnaires employ their skills and combat prowess to defend allies and uphold Andoran's ideals. While many Golden Legionnaire candidates arise from the Andoran military, the Legion also actively recruits non-traditional soldiers with specialist skills. One thing all applicants must demonstrate, though, is unwavering devotion to Andoran ideals of equality, freedom, and justice, securing a written recommendation from a senior Eagle Knight, or, in exceptional cases, a personal endorsement from a member of the People's Council, Andoran's legislative body. The Steel Falcons. The Steel Falcons serve as Andoran's public but international security force. Because they are the public face to Andoran's international affairs, they occasionally function as envoys and diplomats. But they are not simply ambassadors dispatched to foreign soil to serve Andoran's interests diplomatically. Steel Falcons are expected to be resilient and self-sufficient, even in unwelcoming territory. Indeed, survival in hostile lands requires Steel Falcons to master a diverse set of skills to accomplish their missions. The more military-minded Steel Falcons arrange themselves into elite regiments and provide aid to those beleaguered places like the Gravelands and the Worldwound. The more diplomatically minded serve as the spiritual vanguard of Andoran, disseminating the government's philosophical doctrines through any means necessary. Their methods range from enticing foreign nobles with privileged information to liberating the enslaved and orchestrating rebellions in unfriendly territories. Even for those serving more diplomatic functions abroad, although statecraft can address certain challenges, some situations demand no recourse other than direct confrontation. Thus, most Steel Falcons are required to be jack-of-all-trades, and within the Eagle Knights, Steel Falcons are often perceived as a bit egotistical and self-aggrandizing, though this perception of braggadocio primarily stems from amicable competition among the branches. Outsiders often view Steel Falcons as the faces and voices of the Andoran people abroad. Despite the occasional bit of boasting they do, Steel Falcons are better characterized by their collective zeal, unwavering dedication, selflessness, and of course diplomatic expertise. They do acknowledge their boastful reputation among other Eagle Knight branches, but endure this perception with stoicism and patience. They recognize the indispensability of all three branches for Andoran's sustained success and bear no grudges, understanding the interconnectedness necessary for their nation's prosperity. The Grey Corsairs, scourge of the seaborne slaver. Grey Corsairs were incorporated into the Eagle Knights Order during the 50-year naval conflict with Cheliax after the Revolution. They distinguish themselves from the other orders by serving long tours of duty at sea. Effectively, they are the naval arm of the Eagle Knights, and they function as government-sponsored privateers that target pirate vessels or any vessels belonging to nations that still practice slavery. Yet for all their maritime focus, Grey Corsairs must be able to operate with skill on land as well, for they are often expected to mount marine-based raids on island strongholds or other remote locations used by slavers as markets or staging areas. Interestingly, the Grey Corsairs existed for some time before the Eagle Knights officially joined the People's Revolt. While they focused on fighting slavery from the start, they did so in their early days as true pirates rather than privateers. Their assimilation into the Eagle Knights, originally as the naval arm of the Steel Falcons, gave the organization a surprisingly strong presence in the Inner Sea, and with Andoran's direct support, these privateers have become a force to be reckoned with. With the backing of a large maritime power, the skilled sailors of the Grey Corsairs heed the call to action to fight slavery in a more violent and aggressive manner than do their allies in the Firebrands network, and they focus not on mainland slavery, but upon the disruption of the sea trade of slaves. Swift and agile combatants are in high demand on Grey Corsair ships, as are spellcasters with the ability to command elemental forces or confer magical transport. The Twilight Talons. Finally, we get to the covert branch of the Eagle Knights. Among the Eagle Knights, the Twilight Talons bear the heaviest burden in pursuit of the freedom their order strives to secure. These secretive operatives sacrifice years of their lives as spies in nations with cultures that repulse them, enduring the absence of credit or acknowledgement for their clandestine achievements. The moral and ethical dilemmas faced by a Twilight Talon on numerous missions add an additional layer of exhaustion. Frequently, these operatives find themselves making difficult decisions between two evils, grappling with the consequences for months or years afterwards. Yet remaining passive in such crucial moments is considered the gravest evil by the Twilight Talons. Acting with the best intentions, even when faced with challenging choices, is preferable to allowing unchecked malevolence and cruelty to persist. Selection as a Twilight Talon is a prestigious honor, reserved for individuals deemed trustworthy by Marshal Helena Trellis, the head of the Talons. This elite group must possess the strength of character to make morally challenging decisions for the greater good of Andoran, all without seeking public recognition. A successful mission in the eyes of a Twilight Talon is one that goes unnoticed by anyone outside the secretive circles of the Talons. Candidates for the Twilight Talons seldom meet their commanding officer in person. Only after acceptance into the fold do they begin learning details about their fellow operatives, and even then information is shared strictly on a need-to-know basis. While honing their skills in intrigue and spycraft, Twilight Talons also maintain proficiency in combat, ensuring readiness to seize opportunities with speed and brutality. When embarking on a mission, a Twilight Talon may fabricate a false pretext for her departure when informing friends and family, or she might simply vanish for months or even years at a time without explanation. When collaborating with like-minded individuals, such as an adventuring group, a Twilight Talon may choose to reveal her true allegiance, though doing so comes at the risk of repercussions if her trusted companions fail to keep her secret. Before I move on, I must add here that this is an exceptionally fun group to incorporate into your game. When I ran Skull and Shackles for my own group, one of my players played an Andoran character named René Breton from Augustana. René was an Inquisitor of Iomade, but he was posing as an Andoran defector and an Inquisitor of Besmara among the pirates of the Shackles, all the while secretly making contact with his handler and passing on secrets of the Free Captain's Council back to Andoran. In a pretty spectacular character arc, René eventually did defect from Andoran, and really did embrace the worship of Besmara, becoming a true pirate and abandoning his old allegiances. The Tools of the Trade. As I get into the final section of this video, I'd like you to take a look at this classic Eric Belial image of an Eagle Knight facing off against a Hell Knight. Among the distinctive features of the Eagle Knights isn't just their blue, white, and golden attire, it's how lightly armored and simply armed they are. This attire is at least somewhat misleading. Whereas the Hell Knights enforce law and order through brutal strength and intimidation, proudly displaying the raw power at their disposal, the legacy of the Eagle Knights, dating back to the early days of the Civil War and the Thrune occupation period, required them to rely on guile and subterfuge, deploying their full strength only when strategically appropriate. Yes, it's true that being lightly armed and armored helps with espionage and infiltration, but their standard equipment is actually much more powerful than it first seems. Consider the Talon Strike swords, the signature weapon of the Eagle Knights. A slender and elegant hand-and-a-half sword, the Eagle Knights are trained to use these weapons one-handed. In fact, these are bastard swords, a weapon that most untrained would require two hands to use, but their heft is diminished considerably by the fact that the Talon Strike blade is forged of mithril, mined in concealed dwarf forges in the Asphodel Mountains, and smithed in the foundry district of Almas, where an entire community of dwarves settled after being displaced by the destruction of Tar Kadurm during the eruption of the Droskar's Crag volcano. Mechanically, in first edition, these weapons were +2 defending bastard swords that could confer their defending bonus to armor class to the knights' mounts as well as to themselves. On a critical hit, the Talon Strike blades would prevent fiendish entities from retreating to another plane by locking them to the material universe with a dimensional anchor effect, allowing the Eagle Knights to well and truly bring about an end to the demonic or devilish entity that they had hunted. Truly, these are kingly weapons, but the Andorans have produced a great many of these and issued them to champions all across the 4 companies. Also consider the Eagle Knight's dress uniform. Superficially, this looks like a fine set of parade armor, made of heavy cloth, reinforced in some areas with fine but ultralight links of mithril chain, all magically reinforced of course, and with special additional magic to allow an Eagle Knight to break free of restraints, both magical and mundane. But that isn't the most powerful feature. For 10 minutes each day, the dress uniform can be turned into a hardened breastplate, converting it from light armor to heavier, more resilient battle armor at a moment's notice. This is in keeping with the Eagle Knight philosophy of holding their strength in reserve until the moment it is needed. In addition to this common equipment shared across the groups, each of the factions of Eagle Knights make use of additional specialized magical tools. Steel Falcons, for example, are often issued with Golden Eagle epaulettes. These magical shoulder slot items confer a bonus to the wearer's social skills, giving them an unnaturally welcoming charisma. They frequently have other enchantments too, improving a wearer's perception or stealth, for example. Meanwhile, agents of the Twilight Talons are typically marked with a special magical tattoo called a Twilight Tattoo. This invisible magical tattoo identifies one as a member of the Talons, but it only appears visibly when a special command word is spoken. The tattoo has no magical aura when not visible and cannot be revealed through any known magical means beyond the command word. The magic on this tattoo also confers a bonus on the Talons' attempted magical and mundane disguises and on attempts they might make to pick pockets or hide items on their person. Finally, this tattoo protects the Talon from attempts to scry on them in general and against any attempts made to magically read their minds. Finally, a note should be made about the animals bonded in service to the Eagle Knights. Although knights are typically associated with horses, many Eagle Knights are not expert riders and lancers, as other knightly orders often are. Instead, the Eagle Knights have a whole specialized chapter of paladins, called the Scions of Talmandor, who take their name from the Evorul, whose words are believed to have inspired the influential work of political philosopher Darl Ubanik, and by extension, the entire Andoran state. These paladins substitute the traditional bonded mount, common among many orders of paladins, for an eagle companion. This eagle is a faithful ally of the paladins, not a mere pet, a relationship akin to that which a druid or ranger may have with their own animal companion. They can scout for the paladin, deliver messages, or even perform harrying maneuvers and support them in a fight to give the paladin a special edge in combat. All told, the specialized armaments of the Eagle Knights make them a unique and potent force in the Inner Sea region, and increasingly those in the know are aware that an Eagle Knight is always more than what they seem. Wherever they are present, they can be found working to tilt the balance towards justice and freedom.